England, 1912. At the grand mansion of Arthur Birling, a wealthy industrialist, preparations for a celebratory dinner are in full swing. Soon all family members begin to gather gradually. The servants bustle around. At the table sit Arthur, his wife Sibyl, their daughter Sheila, her fiancé Gerald Croft and the Birling's son, Eric. Normally Sibyl does not drink, but on the occasion of her daughter's engagement, she agrees to have a little wine. The maid Edna fills their glasses. The head of the family raises a toast, saying how happy he is about the engagement. For many years Arthur and Eric's father were rivals, but this marriage will unite the two families. Everyone looks to the future with optimism, believing that the war with Germany will not happen, as the newspapers say. Everyone congratulates the young couple. For them, this marriage is not just an alliance between two families, but something more. To prove his love to Sheila, Gerald gives her a beautiful ring. All in all, the dinner goes perfectly. When everyone leaves the table, Sibyl asks her son for a private conversation and expresses her discontent with how much he has been drinking. Eric tries to explain that he is old enough, but Sibyl objects, telling him not to forget moderation. Unfortunately, Gerald's family could not attend the dinner, as they usually take a short holiday at this time of year, leaving Gerald in charge. While his mother is not looking, Eric drinks some wine. Meanwhile, the women converse separately from the men. Sibyl tells her daughter she's done well, as this marriage has secured her future. For any woman, this is extremely important. No one yet knows that another guest is about to arrive, an uninvited one. Arthur tells Gerald that he might soon be knighted. It's too early for congratulations, but he has received a few hints. This makes the marriage even more beneficial for Gerald's family. In Arthur's opinion, it doesn't matter where a person started life, what matters is where they end up. Everything is in our hands. Their conversation is interrupted by Edna, who announces that a police inspector has arrived. Since Arthur still serves as a magistrate, he assumes it must be about a warrant, a routine matter. Arthur asks Edna to show the inspector in. But Inspector Gould is not there about a warrant. He has come because a young woman died in the hospital 3 hours ago. Her name was Eva Smith. She harmed herself, and the doctors couldn't save her. Inspector Gould asks Arthur if he recognizes the name Eva Smith. The man cannot recall it. The inspector then says that Eva left a letter and a diary in her room. She had once worked at Arthur's factory. Mr. Birling confirms that Eva Smith was fired 2 years ago. She was unusually attractive, so Arthur would have remembered her. Gerald interrupts the conversation, asking the inspector whether he should leave. After all, he is not a member of the family yet. But Inspector Gould has no objection to Gerald staying. Arthur does not deny that he fired Eva, but says the reason doesn't matter. As an employer, he had the right to make that decision. Inspector Gould insists that Arthur explain. Mr. Birling reveals that Eva had been one of the ringleaders of a strike at the factory, when the female workers were demanding higher wages. Arthur didn't fire her right away, he gave her a chance. Eva tried to appeal to his conscience, saying that other factories paid far better. Women like her from small provincial towns barely made enough to make ends meet. If they were men, Arthur probably wouldn't have paid them such a pittance. Mr. Birling offered her a deal. He would raise her wages, and in return she would persuade the others to stop striking. But of course Eva refused. Arthur said that in a week, when they had all run out of money, they would come back to work on their own. That's exactly what happened. For her insolence, Arthur fired Eva. The factory continued to run as usual, while Eva was left penniless. Eric thinks his father acted unfairly toward those women, who already had a hard life. Arthur disagrees, saying that if they give in to workers every time, the workers will grow insolent. After all, no one is forcing them to stay. Gerald agrees with his future father-in-law. Sheila enters the dining room, asking what's going on. Eric briefly fills her in. Arthur declares that he has nothing to do with Eva's death. She was fired 2 years ago. But the inspector disagrees. What happened to Eva in the past could have directly affected the present events. Sheila is saddened to hear about the young woman's death. Arthur tells his daughter to go to her mother, but Inspector Gould insists that Miss Birling stay. According to Eva's diary, she remained unemployed for several weeks after being fired. Her parents had died, so she had no home to return to. This pushed Eva to the edge. Arthur does not want his daughter to hear all this. But Sheila believes that perhaps she should hear it. The inspector says that there are plenty of women in their country who live such miserable lives. But Eva was lucky, or so it seemed to her. She got a job at Millward's shop. Sheila says it's an excellent boutique. She herself often buys dresses there. Unfortunately, after just a month and a half, Eva was fired again, this time because of a customer complaint. Gerald says girls like Eva are incorrigible and constantly cause trouble for their employers. Suddenly a horrible realization dawns on Sheila, and she asks Inspector Gould what Eva looked like. He shows her a photograph. Sheila realizes that she was the customer who had complained about Eva. And she hadn't done it for a good reason, it was simply because she had been in a bad mood. The girl had wanted to go shopping alone, and her mother's opinions on the dress style had irritated her. Sheila began taking out her anger on Eva and demanded to see the manager. Despite the manager's attempt to smooth over the situation, Sheila stated that if she ever saw Eva in that store again, she and her mother would shop elsewhere. As a result, Eva was fired. Arthur tries to convince his daughter that it wasn't her fault, but Sheila knows better. She swears never to treat anyone like that again. The inspector suggests that Sheila might have simply been jealous of Eva's beauty. The girl admits it's true. Eric jokes that maybe every member of their family is involved. But when he sees the inspector's serious face, he stops laughing. Inspector Gould declares that he will not leave until justice is served. According to him, after several months of near starvation, Eva decided to take a different path and changed her name to Daisy Renton. Upon hearing this name, Gerald turns pale and pours himself some whiskey. Sheila demands an explanation from her fiancé. Clearly this is not a conversation for outsiders, but Sheila has no objection to the inspector being present. Sibyl wants to know what is happening in the house. Eric responds awkwardly that the inspector is here because of the strange death of a woman. Gerald still cannot bring himself to tell the truth. Sibyl can't understand how Arthur could leave their daughter and her fiancé alone with the inspector during their engagement, and she decides that every family member has the right to be present during the conversation. Inspector Gould insists that Gerald tell the whole truth right now. Where and how did he meet Eva? Gerald reveals that it happened in the bar of a prestigious palace hotel. He was immediately struck by Eva's beauty, and it was easy to guess that she was in a desperate situation. Gerald kindly invited her to dine with him at the hotel restaurant. Eva was very embarrassed. As Gerald suspected, it was her first time in such a place. She had heard about the bar's reputation from someone. Obviously despair had driven Eva there. She was on the verge of being evicted from her room. Apparently it was a dreadful place, but even that she couldn't afford. Everyone waits for Gerald to continue. He says he offered to help Eva with housing and gave her the key to his friend's city apartment. The friend was away abroad for 6 months. Eva, who introduced herself as Daisy Renton, was endlessly grateful to Gerald for his kindness. He assured the young woman that his friend wouldn't return anytime soon and gave her a little money to get by. However, Gerald had selfish intentions, hoping Eva would thank him with more than just words. He returned to the apartment the next day, and thus Eva became his mistress. It's very painful for Sheila to hear about her fiancé's infidelity. Sibyl remarks how disgusting it is. Gerald tries to justify himself, claiming he just wanted to help a woman in distress. It all happened last summer. Sheila remembers that at the time, Gerald was always coming home late, claiming he had work obligations. He deeply regrets his actions. When the realization hits him that Daisy is dead, he breaks down in tears. Inspector Gould asks when the affair ended. Gerald replies that it was in September. They both knew it couldn't go on, and Gerald gave her some money to last until the end of the year. He never saw her again after that. According to the inspector, Eva later went away for 2 months to some seaside resort to collect herself. She felt she would never experience such happiness again and wrote about her feelings in her diary. Sibyl is outraged that the inspector is trying to blame everything on their family. In her opinion, girls like Eva don't even realize the trouble they bring upon themselves. Sheila returns Gerald's engagement ring. Despite everything, she thanks him for being honest, believing that he truly did intend to help Eva at first, and that Eva was desperate because of her. Arthur is very upset about the broken engagement, but Sheila has already made up her mind. Nervously, Eric asks the inspector if he can see the photograph. But the inspector says it is not the right time yet. The young man leaves the dining room, leaving behind many unanswered questions. Outside, Eric smokes, knowing that his own secret is about to come to light. Inspector Gould asks Sibyl if she would like to see Eva's photograph. Mrs. Birling says there is no need, as she has nothing to hide. But the inspector disagrees. Sheila urges her mother to tell the truth. After all, this man in their house will make her do it anyway. Sibyl is an honorary member of the local women's charitable organization, where women in difficult life situations can apply for help. Eric recalls how he regularly met with Eva for money. She no longer even knew who she was or what her name was. The inspector knows that shortly before her death, Eva had sought help from Sibyl's charitable organization, but under the surname Mrs. Birling. Sheila immediately realized that this was no coincidence, and that all of the girl's words about her husband who had abandoned her were nothing but lies. Eva introduced herself with a new name, Alice Gray. She was left pregnant and penniless, in need of help. Sibyl said it was the responsibility of the child's father and advised the girl to marry him. Eva said that was impossible because they came from different social classes. Sibyl still refused to help her, and Eva left empty-handed. It is unbearable for Sheila to listen to this. Now it is clear how much despair Eva had been in. At least Gerald is not the father of the child, judging by the dates. Sibil declares that she does not feel the slightest bit of guilt. The father of the child is to blame, and the inspector should look for him instead of bothering them with pointless questions. Sheila urges her mother to stop, asking if she really does not understand. Eric is the father of the child. Eric's return silences everyone. He asks the inspector to show him the photograph and confirms that it is indeed the same girl he met in a bar. She had introduced herself as Sarah. Eric kept coming back to her, taking advantage of her desperate situation. Soon he began to feel that he truly needed Eva. It was more than just physical attraction. A month ago, he learned that she was expecting a child. Eric was even ready to marry her, but Eva said she did not want to ruin his life. Eric began giving her money regularly. When Arthur realizes that his son has stolen a large sum of money from him, his outrage knows no bounds. It turns out Eric had stolen money before. This leads to a family conflict. When Eva learned that the money Eric had been giving her was stolen, she refused to take it any longer, and he disappeared from her life. Arthur says that Eric has been spoiled from birth, with all those private schools and universities. Inspector Gould firmly stops the conflict, asking everyone in the room to think carefully. Eric is even more devastated when he learns that his mother had refused Eva help shortly before the tragedy. Her end was agonizing. It is hard to imagine anything worse. The inspector prepares to leave and asks only one thing of them, that for the rest of their lives they remember how their actions pushed Eva Smith toward her fatal decision. Millions of people like Eva Smith live side by side with us, and everything we do has consequences. We do not live separately from other people, we are responsible for each other. Wishing them all the best, the inspector leaves. Arthur realizes that there will be an investigation and that they may be called as witnesses. This could lead to a major public scandal. It seems Mr. Birling will not be getting his knighthood. The head of the family demands that his son reveal from which of their clients' accounts he had stolen money. Eric will be lucky if he is not sent to prison. The brother and sister understand that their parents care only about covering up the scandal. Neither Sheila nor Eric wants to become like them. Gerald suggests that they should all come to an agreement, pointing out how strange it is that the inspector did not take everyone's statements right there and then. It was as if he could see right through them, and then simply disappeared into the night. They ask the maid whether the inspector had shown his police badge. Edna replies that he had not. Arthur calls the chief constable, Colonel Roberts, and learns that there is no Inspector Gould. So who was this man who forced each of them to bring their skeletons out of the closet? Sheila says that it changes nothing. But to Gerald, the whole thing seems extremely strange. It appears that the man who had introduced himself as Inspector Gould somehow knew their secrets and wanted to expose them. Moreover, he had shown each of them a photograph of Eva separately, so perhaps they had been different photographs and different girls. Maybe there was never any young woman who had died that day. Gerald becomes convinced of this when he calls the morgue. Hearing this, they all feel great relief. Meanwhile, Inspector Gould, whoever he really was, walks down the dark streets. The young woman is still alive, whether Eva, Daisy, Sarah, Alice, or someone else, but none of those in the Birling household cares. They go on behaving as if nothing has happened. Gerald promises Sheila that he will do everything to win back her trust. Well, Gould had done all he could, but once the Birlings and Gerald learned that they were in no danger, the fate of the woman no longer mattered to them. She finally decides to take the fatal step and drinks poison in the street under the cover of night. A passerby witnessing this carries the young woman to the hospital, but the doctors are unable to save her. In the morgue, Gould holds the lifeless woman's hand and then disappears. At that very moment the telephone rings in the Birling house. This time it is a real inspector. They had been given a chance to save the young woman, but they chose not to take it. Now a police inspector is on his way to ask them some questions. Who will be the next at whose door Gould will appear?